What happened to your leg? Okay. um, like, no, this life happened. Life happened to my leg. this is this is life. These things can't be avoided. So it's just what happened. Basically, is that I was wheeling a wheelbarrow at the monastery here, and suddenly it was a wheelbarrow with concrete in it up a ramp. It was quite heavy, and suddenly something went snap in my leg here. And the doctor said there's some kind of tear in the muscle or something like that. So it's a fairly minor thing. So a 2 or 3 weeks time I'll be okay again. Yeah. But thank you for your care. Okay. So next one here. If Buddhism is to grow and flourish in Australia, what things do you think need to adapt to Australian culture, and what needs to be dropped from inherited Asian culture, particularly from Thailand? Okay. Well, I think we're already, in a sense, the Buddhism that we have at the Buddhist Society of Western Australia is already quite a westernized type of Buddhism. If you go to Thailand, you find actually there is a lot of things that do there which we don't do here. And one of the main things that we have cut down on is the ritual side of things in Asia. In Thailand, they do all kind of pujas, all kind of things, sometimes going on for hours and hours on end. And we do very, very little of that in the West. And I think that's good. I mean, it's good to be respectful, of course. It's good to bow down to good qualities like, loving kindness or peace or whatever. This is always very beautiful. And that's actually one of the important things to remember, is that when you do bow to like a Buddha statue, you're bowing down to the qualities represented by the Buddha statue. That's a very skillful way of looking at what this bowing is all about. You're not bowing to a person necessarily. You're certainly not bowing down to a kind of a piece of metal, which what really a statue is. You're bowing down to qualities. You're bowing down to something which is beautiful. I think this is very important to. This is one of the most important things. I think we are going in the right direction with that. There are other things which I think obviously need to be adapted, and one of those I think we have also got right, and that is to have ordination for women in the West. I think that's extremely important, and I think it has been very, very brave of somebody like Ajahn Brahmali to take that step and actually step out of line from what has been acceptable in many Asian countries, and certainly. The background where Ajahn Brahmali came from, obviously it was not really acceptable to do that. And yet he said, well, we have the strength, we have the ability to go our own way. We don't have to sort of follow what they say in Thailand. And it's wonderful to actually have a leader like Ajahn Brahmali who has that strength of character to just go his own way and disregard what other people say. It's something that I really, really respect Ajahn Brahmali, that ability to go his own way here. And that's what we should be doing here. We are in the West. Western society is not like Thai society. We have to do things differently. It's very important. And we need to look at Buddhism through Western eyes. And it doesn't matter whether you have an Asian background or what you have. When you live in the West, in a sense, you are part of that Western culture. And we have to do things in an Australian way in Australia. It's the only way it's going to survive in the long run. It's the only way it's going to be respected by people around us. And I think that if we didn't do things like women's ordination, then I think eventually Australian society and Western society would say, well, this is not really acceptable. If we care about the well-being of the Buddha's teachings, we have to do this kind of thing. It's very important. And I think that, hope that we can continue with that sense of equality between male and female, both in lay life and also in monastic life, and maybe improve it further to make sure that there is that as great equality as we possibly can have. I think that's extremely important. There are other things as well that we can do. There are certain things, for example, in the monastic vinaya, the way we practice as monks, that probably can be changed in the long run, and which is perfectly acceptable, because a lot of the ways that we practice is not actually what was laid down by the Buddha, but they are things which are part of the tradition that we inherited from Thailand. And these things can change. It's hard to say exactly how far these things should be taken, but certainly, it should be some things that it should be acceptable, basically, in Western society, the way we do things. So I'm not sure if it is necessary to go into greater detail on that one. Is there anything in particular that this person had in mind about this? Okay, so I think we should continue to be open-minded about changing the way we do things. I think that's a great, very, very good point. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Many thoughts I have are tied up with past and present situations. If I achieve inner silence now, how do I deal with all the hurts people cause me? Okay. Well, the thing is that if you do actually achieve inner silence, then in a sense you will already have dealt with the hurts that people cause you. And the reason for that is because that inner silence, you come into the present. At that moment, the past is basically gone because you are here. And the past doesn't matter anymore. When the past is gone, then the hurt of the past is also gone. So this is actually one of the best ways, if you can do that, of overcoming the hurt of the past, the hurt other people cause you. But of course, sometimes the hurt that you carry with you from the past or wherever can become a blockage to actually attaining peace here and now. And what you have to do then is to basically to forgive. That's what you have to do. This is the Buddhist way here. Always forgiving other people for what they have done. And to do that, to forgive, you have to use all kinds of skillful means, smart ways of thinking so that you can forgive other people. You have to remind yourself, for example, that, well, if they really have been bad, they will hurt, they will get the results of those actions. And when you think that they will hurt, they will get the results, then not only can you overcome that sense of having been wronged or whatever, you can even have a sense of compassion for them, because you understand that really they are stupid. They are causing suffering for themselves. You know, if they wrong you and if they do something which is bad, the people they're causing more suffering than you is themselves, because they will have to repay for those actions later on. And when you think like that, you think, gee, they are just deluded and they are stupid. And that stupidity and delusion is going to cause them even more problems and troubles in the future. So turn it around, turn it into a sense of compassion and kindness instead of feeling hurt. Don't focus on yourself, focus on the other person instead. And then you can take away some of that problem. Remind yourself that when somebody does something towards you which is not nice, it is not usually because it is a personal thing. It's not a personal thing against you. The person who does bad things because a certain situation arises. When that situation arises, they act in a certain way. They're like robots, right? This is like a non-self idea in Buddhism. People do things in a certain way because of causes and conditions, not because it's them against you in any way. If there was another person that had your qualities at that time, that person would do the same thing against that person. So it's not about you. Take out the personality, take about this idea of personality clash between two people. This is just cause and conditions arising, things happening. There's no me against them. It's just this person acting in this way when this situation arises. It's not personal. It's never personal. That takes away so much of the hurt. So just be skillful in the way you think. Remind yourself that they are hurting themselves, and then you can forgive. You can say, this is terrible, but I forgive you because I know that the person you're really hurting most of all is yourself, and I can forgive that. I know you're just deluded. You're stupid, and we are all stupid in a certain way, but they are stupid in this way. I can forgive. So be wise, and I think you can go a long way with a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of thinking wisely here. Okay, so the next one here, the arising of the perception of beauty can lead to more contentment and stillness, but the perception of beauty can also transform into sense desire. Why can beauty lead one way or the other? What can we do to prevent beauty becoming sense desire? What can we do if beauty does transform into sense desire? Okay, so it's all about where you see the beauty, right? So that's why I say you have to actually look at the beauty in the piece, And instead of looking at the beauty in any kind of anything which has to do with the five senses, so you have to find the beauty in the peace. And it is true, sometimes it can sort of turn over into sensual, seeing the beauty in sensual things. But really, I think that what happens usually is actually the opposite. The more you're able to see the beauty in peace, the more you see the beauty in stillness, the more you see the beauty in meditation or samadhi and mindfulness and kindness and metta and all these things, the more you have an alternative refuge. You have a different place you can go to where you find happiness. And this is what it's really all about, because the reason we turn to the happiness of the five senses is because that's where we find happiness. If you have another place where you find that happiness and peace, you don't need the happiness of the five senses so much anymore. So although it is true that it can certainly turn over into the five senses, actually, by seeing the beauty in the other places, you are building up an alternative refuge for yourself. And it means that in the long run, that will enable you to overcome the sense desires, the desire concerned with the five senses. So the more you can work on your kindness, the more you can work on your compassion, the more you can work on the inner stillness, the more free you become from the sense desires. It may never cease completely, but at least you're going in the right direction. That's what matters here. So don't worry too much about the fact that sometimes it does turn. It goes the wrong way. If it does, then just remind yourself, no, this is not the time. Let me, and gently lead your mind back to the silence again. This is not the right time to think about the five senses. This is the right time to think about meditation practice. I think that's probably enough on that one. Okay, next one here. Is it rude to put your feet out directly in front of a monk or statue of the Buddha? It is traditionally, it is considered rude to point your feet in the direction of a Buddha statue. In fact, it is not only to a Buddha statue, but basically it's considered rude to point your feet towards anybody in traditional Asian societies. Even in the Indian society at the time of the Buddha, it was considered wrong to point your feet towards somebody, because the sole of the feet, particularly in those days, is the dirtiest part of the body, because often they wouldn't have shoes, you walk around, and in a sense you're sort of, pointing the dirtiest part of your body towards somebody else. That was considered wrong. And that's still true in Asia today. You're not supposed to point your feet towards people or a Buddha statue or anything like that. In the West, we don't really have that so much, although maybe sometimes that can be considered rude in certain circumstances. But it's good to keep that in mind, because certainly in a very kind of multicultural society we have now, it is one of those things. You can possibly offend people if you do that. But I think generally speaking, it's not a big issue. You don't have to worry too much about that. I think if you, it's really the Australian culture that is important for Australia. So you do whatever is considered right according to Australian culture. Okay, how important is virtue and sila for meditation? Oh, it's incredibly important. It's the end-all and be-all of meditation, basically here. Also, in the Buddha's time, did they use chairs as common as we did? I wonder why he didn't sit in a chair. Okay. That's a good question. I think he did sit on chairs sometimes, because there are very clear references to chairs in the Vinaya, and Vinaya is like the discipline for the monks and the nuns, and there are references to chairs there. They have what they call, I think it's called a seven-limb chair. A seven-limb chair has four legs, it has armrest, and it has a backrest. So it's like a comfortable chair these days, a similar kind of thing. And so they did have chairs, but it seems like in those days it was more common to sit on the floor than sitting on chairs. And there was one place somewhere where a certain nun goes to the Buddha and she says that, I can't be comfortable unless I sit cross-legged. I'm not comfortable, in any other position. And that, I think, points to me that the general way that people sat in those days was cross-legged. That was kind of the way people grew up, and they sat on the floor. Of course, for that reason, it was very natural for them. This was a very easy kind of position to sit cross-legged. And I think that is the main reason why the cross-legged posture was also the meditation posture, because it was a posture of ease and relaxedness for the ancient Indians. So anybody who has grown up on the floor is probably the best position you can have for meditation. But for people who are grown up in a modern culture, wherever that might be, and who are used to sitting on chairs, it might very well be the case that the best posture is actually sitting on a chair and not sitting on the floor. You can experiment with these things and see what works for you, but either one is fine, of course, as long as it works. But I want to go back to the first part of this one. How important is virtue and sila meditation? It is extremely important. It is basically everything there is. If you're going to have success in meditation, virtue is absolutely paramount. And the reason for that is simply that you want to have a bright mind, you want to have a light mind, you want to have a mind which feels a sense of joy and happiness. If you do bad things, you will never feel joyful inside. You will feel a kind of dark, grayish kind of state. You won't feel happy. So virtue is so important to give that sense of lightness and brightness inside of you. And when we say virtue, we mean first of all, of course, the bodily virtue, how we behave towards other people physically. We mean the verbal virtue, how we speak to others. But we also mean the mental virtue, how we think about other people. This is also very important. It's only when you have a mind which actually is positive, which is wholesome, which has compassion, loving kindness, and all these kind of things, which is peaceful. That is the kind of mind that will actually be able to meditate properly. So it is really, without virtue, no meditation is possible, at least not consistently. And with virtue, that is the type of meditation that really takes off. So extremely, extremely important. And that is why I say to people, use this opportunity now. Look at your mind. See how the mind, when it is happy, content, how easy meditation is then. When you feel good inside of yourself, you feel good about yourself, you feel good about the people around you, and see how wonderful it is then, how peaceful you can become. And that will then encourage you to improve your virtue also in ordinary life, outside of a retreat situation. You go out and you know that if you do things right in ordinary life, it will be an incredible support for your meditation practice. It gives that encouragement, because it's always difficult to be kind. If it was easy to be kind, we'll do it all the time. It's not always easy, because it's not easy because there are always loads and loads of challenging situations in our lives. That's just the nature of life. But the more you can see the connection between virtue and meditation, the greater is your ability and your motivation to be able to actually fulfill that virtue in ordinary life. So do a little bit of metta meditation if you can every day. Wake up in the morning, if you have a chance and opportunity, do at least 10 minutes of metta meditation, so you have a good start to the day. Maybe 10 minutes in the evening if you can. And at the very least, that will help you to support the virtue during ordinary life, your ordinary day. Music is playing in my head while meditating. Should I stop it? Okay. Yeah, this is, you're not the first one to experience that. Very common. No, don't stop it, because if you stop it, if you use force to stop it, again, it's not going to be, usually it's going to be counterproductive, because then the music is going to come back even more loud afterwards. Because the mind basically wants to do this. It wants to find something. So what you have to do instead, you have to turn your mind to some other kind of happiness. The reason the music is playing is because you find happiness with that music. You think it's beautiful. Maybe you are not all that content on the meditation retreat or something. So try instead to do something else which creates that happiness inside of you. Enjoy the peace. Enjoy the kind of the metta and the compassion for the people around you. Enjoy being here. And the more you enjoy being here, the more beautiful it becomes, and the less interesting is that music. Sometimes lay people ordinary people, we don't have music in the monastery, that's why I say lay people. Sometimes people say, well, as a Buddhist, should I listen to music? Is it against the precepts? And no, it's not against the precepts. If you find after a long day, for example, that music helps you to calm down and become peaceful and relaxed, go for it. Use that music to make you feel peaceful and calm. That is what music should do. But, you use these things to help us in the right direction. And then once you feel peaceful and calm, having used music, then you can maybe sit down and do a bit of meditation. So you can use, like, in a sense, sensual pleasures, to some extent at least, unless it is too coarse. You can use it to sort of help you in the right direction. Of course, when you come on a meditation retreat like this is the time to let go of that music altogether. But skillful use of music, I think, is okay, as long as it takes you in the right direction, makes you feel better. Okay. Why would the body harm itself? I suffer from ITP. Platelets get destroyed by own body. Okay. Is there a way I can heal my body? What kind of meditation would be best? There is no certainty that you can heal your body. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. It's very hard to say. It just depends on the nature of the illness and the nature of the meditation you do and all these kind of things. But there is a possibility. And at the very least, as Ajahn Brahmali likes to say, you can always care. And caring is the most important thing. And when you care for your body, you don't get angry with the illness, you don't get upset, but you accept the illness for what it is. And then you have a sense of compassion and kindness for yourself. You realize this is life. Just like my leg going out of a thing, it's life. There's nothing to get angry about. This is just what happens when you have legs. Sometimes they don't function properly. And the same thing with you. Sometimes you get reborn into a body which may not function 100%, which may have problems with it. So the first thing to do is to accept the situation. It's always going to be like this. There's always going to be problems. Sometimes you're going to have major problems in life. It's okay to have those problems. It's nature. It's the way it has to be. If you think like that, then you come to accept it. That's the very first thing, acceptance. Because then you can feel at ease. You can be relaxed with the pain. You can be relaxed, at least to some extent, with pain. You can be relaxed with illness and all these kind of things. And then the second thing, once you have reached acceptance, is to send yourself some metta, some compassion. Body, may you be well and happy. I don't want you to be better. I accept you as you are. And then if the body gets better, it's fine. If it doesn't, you don't worry too much about it. And when you have that kind of attitude, then if the illness is still there, you're okay, you can deal with it. And at the same time, you're maximizing the chances for the illness to disappear because you are feeling at ease, you're relaxing, and you're giving the body a chance to heal itself by being relaxed and by having metta for yourself. And of course, if there are medicines, if there are things that medical science can do to help you, great. Take that opportunity. Don't sort of deny yourself the medicines or whatever of life. These are things that are important. Medicine can help you. Take that medicine. If I live in the now, how do I get the future organized? As a mum of 3 kids, it seems if I'm not organized and plan ahead, I will drown. Yeah. That's a good point. And of course, the idea is not to always just focus in the present moment. The idea is that when you come on a retreat like this is the time to focus on the present moment. And what you find is that if you can do that, if you can leave the planning aside for this, at least when you sit down in meditation, leave the planning aside, you find that your mind is so much more powerful afterwards, that then you can really plan and you can see what you really should be doing. So the point is to know the right time for planning and the right time for staying in the now and being able to sort of shift back and forth between the two. That is the point. The problem is that usually we keep on thinking about the future all the time. It sort of runs around the head. Should I do this? Should I do that? What should I be doing next? We're never able to come to the present moment. And because you're never able to get to the present moment, you never have the clarity to actually make good and wise decisions. So remember that put things into like boxes. now is meditation, now is planning. Don't mix everything up into one. Don't sort of make a kind of big stew of it. That's what we usually do. We're not able to separate things out properly and compartmentalize properly. So do things at the right time. Don't obsess about things. And then I think you probably become a much better planner. And I'm sure your kids will appreciate that as well. So see what happens. Okay, is enlightenment an experience or understanding that lasts a short time, or is it a permanent change in one's understanding of the way things are? It is a permanent change in one's understanding of the way things are, because enlightenment is a radically new way of seeing the world, or looking at the world in a new way. And the most important difference between an ordinary person, if you want to call it that, and somebody who is, I prefer the word awakened, because that's quite literally what the word Buddha means. It means awakened, the awakened one. The main difference is this idea of non-self. You see that there is no abiding, a permanent self inside of you. You are here, but it's like a changing flux, always changing, moving along. And that is a radical and different way of looking at the world from what you're used to. And because when you see that there is no permanent core inside of you, that also undermines things like anger and desire. Because anger and desire comes from the sense of me, of I. You desire because you are here and you want things, you want to acquire things, or you become angry because you can't control the world around you. Once you take away the sense of self, anger and desire also disappear. And this is what the enlightened state of mind is like. You have no desires anymore, cravings. You have no anger or ill will anymore, and you have most importantly of all, you have seen through what we call the delusion that there is an I, an abiding core inside of you, which is permanent. And that insight is permanent. Once you get that, you can't go back again. But of course, it's an extremely happy and pleasurable experience. It's not something you have to fear. When you see that, it's like, wow, why haven't I always seen this? This is just such a wonderful thing and so obviously true. It's madness, what I saw before. So that is very briefly what awakening is about. My observation in lay life appears that the ego is increasing daily and the moral conscience decreasing. Okay, so you're talking about society in general, presumably. Am I just cynical, or is this a reality of today? Please comment. Well, I think we have to be very careful in judging society around us. It's very hard to know what is actually happening here. I remember reading many years ago, I remember Plato, Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, and he was looking around in society around him and seeing all the young people, being up to mischief, and said, gee, things are going down really rapidly here. And that was in Plato's time, 2,300 years ago. So nothing has changed. So I think what is really happening is that as you get older and you look at society, very often there is that perception that things are degenerating. And often that is sometimes it's just a perception that because society is changing, because people are acting differently, sometimes I think it can seem like degeneration, but perhaps it isn't. I think that is one possibility. Another possibility is that we go through cycles, society goes through cycles, and I think if you look over the long term, I don't necessarily think society today is any more violent than it was, say 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Maybe it is more violent than it was 20 or 30 years ago. But that may just have been, why was it so peaceful 30 years ago? It may have been like the peace dividend after the Second World War. People were so fed up with fighting and killing each other that, okay, let's be peaceful for a while. And maybe that is wearing a bit off now. But I think in the long run, I don't think we are any worse today, maybe also no better than we have been at other times. Recently, I saw a statistic of whether society today is more peaceful or more violent, whether there's more crime than there has been in the past. And according to this statistic, and I think this was for the UK, there is less crime and less violence now than there ever has been before, according to this statistic. So again, it's a hard one. It's difficult to know, and in the end, all you can do is look after your own practice, make sure you do the right thing, and then not to be too judgmental, I think, one way or the other. I notice that most people meditate sitting in the lotus position. Is this the best way to meditate, and why? Well, it's not. This is not really lotus. This is called like the Burmese posture, because I have both my knees on the ground and both my feet on the ground. Lotus is like when you put that leg onto the thigh over here and this leg on the thigh over there. That's the lotus position. And I wouldn't recommend that. It's very. It takes a lot of practice to get into that position. It's really, again, it's what you feel comfortable with. If you're comfortable like this, great, sit like this. If you're not, sit on a chair. Buddhism is about what works, what makes the meditation function for you, what makes you peaceful, what makes you feel relaxed, what makes you feel at ease, what makes it easy to have compassion and metta for yourself and others. If you have a lot of pain, it's difficult to have compassion for yourself because you're forcing pain onto yourself. And again, if you're going to watch the breath or be peaceful, it's difficult if you have too much pain. So whatever works is always the answer to these things. I feel my shoulder become stiff. And then sore after sitting in lotus position after extensive period of time. Should I change position? Yes, change position. Try other type of meditation, e.g. walk meditation. Sure, try other type of meditation. Continue to let the pain sink in and endure, if hoping it will eventually go away. No, don't do that. That's just silly. That is, don't allow the pain to endure. A little bit of pain is okay, because it's impossible to have a body completely without pain. There's always going to be tiny little discomforts. That's fine. But if it is something which is not natural, not ordinary, by all means, change your posture. Don't be like the tough person who is going to tough it out, because normally it just makes meditation unpleasant. You will never come back to this retreat center again because you're so fed up with this retreat center. You've got incredible negative association with meditation, and it destroys your whole spiritual path. I always like to talk about the man I met in Singapore a few years ago. And this man, I was living in his flat because I was over there giving some talks. And he said to me, I went to this meditation retreat and I never, ever again do I want to go on meditation retreat. It was so incredibly unpleasant. I felt so uptight, so uncomfortable. Meditation retreats, never, ever again. And that is terrible. It's really, really bad. Meditation is supposed to be relaxing. You're supposed to feel at ease. And he was experiencing the exact opposite. And part of the reason for that is because he was maybe doing a technique that he wasn't ready for, or perhaps the teacher wasn't giving instructions that were appropriate for him. There was something going wrong there. And I tried to tell him, well, you don't have to judge all meditation because of that. But once that negative thing has sort of got stuck in your mind, it's very hard to change it. So make sure that you enjoy the meditation. It's supposed to be feel at ease, good about yourself. Don't tough it out. Don't be some kind of hero or anything like that. Don't look at your neighbors. Don't compete with anybody. It doesn't matter what the person next to you is doing. You are here looking after yourself, your own spiritual well-being. If you are the only one who doesn't sit more than 5 minutes, that's okay. You can be the only one because you're looking after yourself. You're looking after your meditation practice. You're not competing with anybody at all. What works for you, that is the right thing for you to do. Okay, is tantric or Hindu meditation technique compatible with the technique taught at this retreat? Hari Om Tat Sat, is that some kind of Hindu mantra or something? Okay, I haven't heard that one before. I certainly am no expert in Hindu meditation. The thing is, that what you want to do, the only thing you need to be concerned about is, why do we meditate? And once you know the goal of meditation, then you know whether you can use that technique or not. So why do you meditate? You meditate to feel at peace, to feel relaxed. You meditate to feel good about yourself, to have a sense of compassion and kindness and metta towards the people around you. Is that happening with your meditation technique? Is the meditation technique leading to anger? Is it leading to lots of pain? Is it leading to selfishness? Is it leading to confusion? If it leads to confusion and delusion, and you feel that you are sort of going a little bit off the out of your mind, so to speak, then you have to be very, very careful. There are meditation techniques that actually lead to confusion and lead to delusion instead. Be very careful with those. It's supposed to lead to clarity, to understanding, to seeing things better in your life. So be careful. Look at your mind. If it is improving your mental state, you know that you cannot be far wrong. That technique is actually working. I don't know much about tantric techniques. There's supposed to be all kind of tantric meditation techniques. I don't really know enough about them to say anything. But if you use that general guideline about how meditation is supposed to work, then you're on the right track. You're going the right way. So think about the result that these things are supposed to give, and then you should have a very clear guidance you can use for yourself. Okay, how can we avoid taking on all the negative energy and rushing impatience in the world day-to-day life? Good question. Of course, to some extent you can't. To some extent you will take on some of that energy. That's just impossible to avoid it completely. So what you have to do then instead is you have to build like a dike or a barrier inside of you, which ensures that you take on as little of that energy as you possibly can. And that is, I think, what meditation in daily life is about. It's about building up your resistance, building up your kind of mental and spiritual immune system, so that when you go out into your ordinary day, you have some resistance towards the ordinary difficulties of life. And that means if you do a few minutes of meditation in the morning, just to feel more peaceful, to have more sense of kindness and goodness, that is a wonderful way of building up that immune system. And of course, just generally having a sense of sila, of virtue in your life, so that you know that when you come across a difficult situation, you're able to hold back and not react in a negative way. So build up that immune system, that dike, which sort of stops the flood of the worldly things to come into your mind. But don't raise the bar too high. Don't think that it's possible to avoid these things altogether. It isn't. Life goes up and down. Sometimes in monastic life, I get quite busy and not things to do. And sometimes when you do that, you get carried away and you do things maybe you shouldn't be doing and say things you shouldn't be saying. So don't be a perfectionist, but just move in the right direction. Gradually, carefully, slowly. Know what you need to do, and don't judge yourself harshly. Don't judge yourself at all if it doesn't work, but just see, okay, I'll learn from this, and then I'll move on. Can you please tell us about karma? What are the consequences of being kind and generous, even when we don't want to? Okay. So, karma, the idea of karma is just that how your actions in life, and in particular your mental state that goes with those actions, is very important for the consequences you reap in the future. You are creating your own future by the way you're acting here and now. So, because of that, the point here about being generous, for example, kind and generous, there are many, many ways of being kind and generous. Being kind and generous is always good. It is true that sometimes you may not want to be kind and generous. In other words, it doesn't come naturally, it doesn't come from the heart. But even if it doesn't come from the heart, the fact that you're doing it is a positive thing, because there's something in you which intends to be kind, even though it may not come all that naturally. So, whatever you do, always be kind, always be generous if you have the opportunity here, even if it doesn't come naturally here. And what you will find is that if you practice in this way, then gradually your perceptions and your views will start to change. And after a while, suddenly one day you find yourself being kind and generous naturally. It comes from the heart. And then it becomes something very, very powerful. So you just have to learn to sort of guide yourself in this way, and gradually things will start to happen in the right way. So you start off, and then over time you develop. And one of the, of course, helps, the aids to do this is to do a bit of metta meditation, to actually understand that people around you are suffering. Everybody has difficult lives. Nobody has more happiness than they want to. I've never heard anybody saying, I got too much happiness. Or, this doesn't happen. So because of that, we all have more suffering than we bargained for in this life. So remember that. And then it's easier to be kind. It's how we look at other people that is so important. If you look in the right way, if you have the right perception, it's easier. So all of these things are part of the equation here. When I meditate and try to keep the mind still, I have very vivid pictures of animals, animal faces, i.e. cats, eagle, monkey, etc. Is this the norm? I think it might be slightly exaggeration to say it's the norm, but I think it is the norm in the sense that people have all kind of experiences when they meditate. All kind of perceptions arise, and it's quite common to have like pictures arising in the mind of anything, basically. So perhaps you have some kind of connection with animals, I don't know what it might be, and because you have some kind of past connection, these things arise when you sit down peacefully here. This is very common here. So this is nothing to worry about. This is just a stage that you're passing through. The idea that these things happen could be a good sign. Because if you don't normally have very vivid pictures of animals, the fact that they arise now could be due to the fact that your mind is becoming more peaceful. So it's very likely to be a good thing here. So don't worry about that. So when that happens, what you do is, if you wish, you just be there with those pictures and just stand back and just watch them. And once you watch them, it's like you get a sense of distance from the picture. You are sort of standing back and the picture is there. And once you stand back and you get that sense of mindfulness, you can actually, the picture doesn't become so disturbing anymore. And as the picture is less disturbing, you can become peaceful even while the picture is there. And gradually you will probably find the picture fades away because you're just focusing on the peace. And when you're focusing on the peace, all the extra things start to disappear. So don't try to control it, don't try to change it. If you do, again, you are just encouraging a mind which likes to do that sort of thing, that is to see pictures. Seeing the picture is the mind working, is the mind doing stuff. If you want the mind not to do stuff, don't control. That's the only way. Could you please give some advice on how I can stop judging people and feeling angry and critical? Okay. Yeah, very good question, because this is what we all are probably too critical sometimes. You all get angry sometimes. So again, don't judge people, because we are not really in control of our lives. We are what we are conditioned into being. We have come from a certain past. We have been brought up in a certain way by certain parents. We've gone to certain school. We had certain friends. And all that conditioning has made us what we are. If it was just a matter of, I want to be like this, I will be like this, nobody would ever get angry. We would always be very nice to each other. There would be no problems at all in the world. But it's precisely because we cannot control ourselves. It's impossible. This is what non-self is all about. We are a function of external things. It's precisely because of that that you can have compassion on people. Because you know that if they did control themselves, if it was possible, they would be kind. Because we all know inside us that kindness is equivalent to happiness. Kindness is equivalent to peace. If you look inside, you know that. So, because of that, remind yourself that that person that you are critical of, whatever it is that you are criticizing, they are the first person to be afflicted by whatever it is that they are doing. They are afflicted. They are not in control. They have a problem. So have compassion instead of being judgmental. There's probably nothing much they can do about it, at least not in the short term, although in the long term you can of course develop if you practice the right way. So judgment never works, and instead have compassion. Compassion always works. When you understand the idea of non-self, you know that compassion is always right, because people are not in charge of their lives. And that's also why we become self-judgmental. We judge ourselves because we think, I should be better, I shouldn't be doing this, I should be kind and nice all the time, I shouldn't think bad thoughts. But we can't do that. It's impossible because we are conditioned from the past. And these bad things, they arise because of cause and conditions. So have compassion for yourself. Don't judge yourself harshly. If you become angry, it's okay. Just try to see if there's a different way you can look at the other person, a different way you can look at the world, and gradually you will undermine the anger. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take months, years of practice, but eventually you can do it. And when you understand, the more you understand that you are an outcome of conditions and causes, the more forgiveness you can also have for yourself. So remind yourself of that. What you are right now is a function of all these things in the past, and then forgive yourself. Last question. Good timing. I've got 1 minute to read the last question. How do you do walking meditation? Okay. So walking meditation is really like any other meditation practice, and you can either do like a peaceful meditation, just walking back and forth, just feeling the peace around you. One very common way of doing it, if you start to feel peaceful, is to watch the feet. You watch the movement of the feet, and you feel the feet as you're moving along. And if you can focus on that, you can actually become very concentrated on the feet. But that is quite difficult to do. So I would say either often when you do walking meditation, you can use that as a contemplation time. Because you're already moving, there's a certain amount of activity involved in walking. It is a good time to contemplate. So what do you contemplate? Well, the things you contemplate is like just feeling, for example, the joy of being around a group of good people. You can contemplate metta, reflecting back. Now you're finally here on the retreat center. You're far away from your ordinary life. You can remind yourself of the good qualities of some of the people back home, for example. Maybe people that otherwise you don't have any particular feeling towards, or even difficult feeling towards. Now is a good time to change your perception of those people, which will make it easy when you go back again. Or you can just have general good feelings for beings around you. So that is one way of contemplating while you're doing a walking meditation. Another way that I like to do sometimes, and some of you may not like this, I know that people really hate this kind of meditation exercise, but what I like to do is to reflect on my own death. I think to myself, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around. I could be dead tomorrow, could be dead in an hour, I just don't know. And somehow that undercuts a lot of the desires, the ill will, the pettiness, the stupidity of the mind. Because if I really am dead in 1 hour, why do I want to think so much about the future? Why do I want to think about, why do I want to desire things that I'm never going to use? And one day it is going to be an hour till you're dead. It could be now. If you're not ready now, will you ever be ready? This is the time to be ready. When you start to think like that, it can really clear away so much of the rubbish in the mind and make it very clear what you have to be doing. I find that very powerful. You may feel uncomfortable with that. That's fine. If you feel uncomfortable, don't do it. But if you feel comfortable with it, then it's actually can be very, very powerful way of meditating and contemplating. So these are some of the ways of contemplating while doing walking meditation. So either you can walk for the peace, if you feel like that, or you can walk doing contemplation.